As the Guilty Gear beta comes to a close, I've come to sit back and just kind of go over my experience and give some of my thoughts on what I felt about the open public test, since what we received in this beta is more reflecting of what we can see in the full retail release of the game. And this has been a game I've been shilling for a long time, and there's a lot of hype around it. A lot of people have been obsessing over this game, and when I started my channel, actually, I love playing fighting games in general, but I planned for a large majority of my content to be about Guilty Gear Strive. It was a game I really wanted to dig my teeth into and, create content for. But after the closed beta happened, the game got delayed and kind of put a stop to that, and I kind of just been waiting around to hear more about it. And so I just kind of put it off to the side, and I saw a lot of people developing a lot of hype around it and getting super excited, and then this open beta happened and it gave us training mode. It gave us so much stuff to dig our teeth into and really experience what this game has to offer. And this beta also is more reflective of what the full retail release of the game is. So I had my hopes set really high, and I was really amped to play it. One thing I would like to just kind of get out of the way is I was kind of salty, and I think a lot of us were salty over the fact that, we kind of came to find out that, a lot of people, content creators, combo guide people, got the beta way earlier than a lot of other people. And also, there's a lot of exclusive content creators that also got 24 hours. I think it was a day or 2 days early access to the beta we currently played ahead of everybody else, which is fine. It's understandable. They use that to kind of test it out, make sure everything works. Completely understandable, but I was a little disheartened to see that business model being used, that a lot of people weeks even before then have had access to a review copy or a beta copy that they had exclusively for themselves to start digging into and dissecting the game. And they were allowed to post content about it. They were allowed to share these videos and show these combos of all these characters before everyone even had a chance to play the game. And I was a little mad about that. It kind of put a bad taste in my mouth because, day one of a fighting game is some of the best times you can have playing a fighting game. I like to say day one and the first month is when everyone's figuring stuff out and everyone's kind of sharing tech and learning off of each other. And that's the golden time to get into a fighting game that's releasing. But this has been going on weeks, maybe even months as far as we know, that people have had their hands on this game and are sharing content. And the mystique of it kind of got killed for me then. I even think it was ballsy on the developer's side to even include training mode in this open beta, because that's one of the most important tools to figuring out a fighting game and labbing matchups and stuff like that. And I think it's extremely generous that they went ahead and added that to the beta for people to mess around in. But also, it led to a lot of people within hours of this beta coming out just completely ripping it apart. And this was supposed to be, from their words, a network test, which ended up, in my opinion, becoming hey, just take the game, break it, find what you can, and just, rip the game apart so we can see what faults that we have and stuff. It was just, we were all basically unpaid interns of Arc System Works to basically rip their game apart and find the flaws, because I guess their people can't really do that, because there's people discovering infinites and, glitching through the floor, just to name a few things. But there was dozens and dozens of crazy stuff that people found within hours of this thing dropped, which is like a double-edged sword. And you're going to hear me use that expression a lot, a double-edged sword. It's great in one sense that they are allowing people to do this stuff so they can find the problems to balance the game out to make it better. But on the other side, it kind of kills it for a lot of people who haven't had access or early access to this beta, have been able to participate on it, whether they're PC players and don't have a PlayStation, or people are waiting to get a PS5 until they get it so they don't have a PS4 to play the beta. It's a lot of red tape, I understand. It's not something that should completely be considered when doing this type of stuff. But if you're coming in fresh day one with absolutely no experience in this game, not playing any of the betas, or not watching the smorgasbord of content that's now been published, you're going to be, and you go into the game blind, you're going to be at a significant disadvantage, whether you're a fighting game veteran or whether you're a casual player, because so many people have been playing this game literally months before it even comes out and have been ripping it apart. So it's kind of a double-edged sword in that regard. We get people finding flaws, finding problems, and helping the developers fix the game up, but also you're getting a bunch of people who just completely annihilate day one when this game releases. Let's talk about the netcode. Now, let's just put it in perspective. I think out of 40 straight matches, maybe 3 of those matches had noticeable problems with the netcode, where I was inputting moves that weren't coming out, or my attacks were going straight through somebody, or it kind of stopped for a second to catch everything up. And it's only really noticeable because literally, I would say 90% of the time, your matches are so clean and so good off over long distances. It's absolutely phenomenal. Like going and playing this and then going and playing Street Fighter V with someone who's 3-barring, it's like night and day, because the netcode in this game is so solid. And I gotta tell you, man, like, it's going to be hard to go back and play other fighting games that don't have rollback netcode, because this game is just amazing with it. And I gotta say that if they can keep tuning it up and make sure they keep how it's working, I mean, we have a bright future. Future fighting games adopt rollback netcode just like this has, because I gotta tell you, it was great. The game itself is just so fun. It's easy to pick up and start figuring stuff out, but has a huge ceiling and depth with the Roman cancels and everything like that, with your bursts, with your meter, everything like that is extremely deep, but you can wrap your head around it, and it's not super intimidating for people who don't normally play fighting games, but someone who has some legacy knowledge of Guilty Gear or previous experience playing fighting games are going to be able to really find some interesting and unique ways to play their characters, which is how a fighting game should be. It shouldn't take a huge amount of execution just to do a streamlined spreadsheet of things, but give you the tools to be able to create something unique and play the character how you want to play them through labbing and figuring it out on your own and finding your own identity with that character. And also with the defensive mechanics in the game that are brilliant. I mean, I gotta say, with a game that plays this well and has this many cool mechanics to it, along with the great netcode, it's so hard to find things to slam about it or find faults in it, because the overall experience is some of the best I've ever played in an online fighting game. But unfortunately, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. The lobby system from the closed beta made a return, and it was still just as clumsy, just as confusing and broken as it was in the closed beta. Even though they seem to have added a few more animations and it functioned once in a while, it still is extremely awkward to go into and cumbersome. And they now added a mode where you could actually go into training mode and just find matches from there while you're in training mode, which was really convenient, but unfortunately, on the second day of the beta, it seemed to be very fickle and started acting up. So, unfortunately, the only way I could find matches for a while was through the lobby, and that meant I had to interact with it, and half the time it was so janky that I would just turn off the game for a while and do maybe 2 or 3 matches and get off. And that's when I decided that I was good with the beta and I'll just wait for the game to come out now when that happened. Just because a lot of times I would, fight somebody and let's say they beat me and I wanted to rematch them, I would accidentally click on view R code or something like that to pull up the enemy player statistics, and in the beta it just really wasn't optimized that well. So it would take 5 minutes to load this profile, and I was stuck on a frozen screen until it loaded, and the guy I wanted to rematch would have just walked away or teleported away or what have you. And it was just a huge mess, and just should have been cut out of the full release of the game. I wish it was, but it looks like it's here to stay. a lot of people noted in the closed beta that the damage was astronomically high. And in the open beta, the damage is still astronomically high. And I prefer it this way. I love that the damage is so high in the game because it makes people have to play and use their defensive options and kind of slow the game down and use their neutral tools more and not just go in unga bunga all the time. Now, you can do that, and that can be viable with like Leo and Saul and stuff, but when you have people just hitting buttons, these matches just fly by because the damage is so high. So if someone makes a mistake and you hit them, they're losing half their health bar or more just because of one mistake. So when I started playing with more skilled players who were using defensive options and slowing the game down and, playing defensively a little more, the rounds got way more dynamic, way more interesting. But when you're playing with people who are just kind of going in for the first time, those matches just blaze by. And in that regard, it becomes a kind of a double-edged sword because obviously when you have optimal combos and you're doing big combo damage, it's astronomical in this game and it rewards you highly. But also just normals and getting like a 3-hit in does astronomical damage, right? So it kind of feels a little weird sometimes when, it's like, should I try and get this big combo and finish the round, or can I just poke them 2 or 3 more times and they'll be dead? And that was a little weird for me. And, I hear a lot of people, they were like saying, oh, Leo and stuff is like a mess and blah, 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 blah. Genuinely, I think the character I had the most trouble with, and I don't think I won a single round from, and I also spent like an hour labbing and I still couldn't figure him out, was Axel Low. Because Axel Low is a zoning character and he has a lot of ranged attacks. He also has a really good command grab. He has a good anti-air, air-to-air. And he's extremely well-rounded as a zoning character. But the damage he does, just from his normals, is just as much as everybody else's. Which, yeah, I know it makes sense, but he can do it from full screen. He's just taking half your health bar down with 2 or 3 attacks from across the screen, and you just cannot get in on that guy. And that's what kind of makes Axel, in my opinion, a little bit of a nightmare, because he's just got the tools, but the damage doesn't really match the tools, in my opinion, because he can just completely annihilate you full screen and you can't get in on him. So he's really tricky, and it's maybe some stuff they want to look at with him. I think the command grab that he has too is a little shitty, but it's not anything that a lot of practice and time could go into, and I could play around that, obviously. But even if I do figure it out, I think he's just a nightmare to fight against. Even with the time I put into the game, and even with all the people that have put way more hours into this and had way earlier access to it than I have, I still feel like a lot of us are just kind of scratching the surface, though, because this game does have a very deep combo system, and so many different systems that play that opens every character up to do some amazing stuff, and it's something to really look forward to with the game. And I think that's going to be the highlight of that game, is just the amount of options and creativity you can have with each character. And that comes with also them having sort of a smaller roster of characters on launch. I do want them to add a lot more characters. That would be nice, but I don't want them to get too crazy with it, because I think it'd be cool to kind of have this, make people really want to stick to a character and become character specialists and play them dozens of different ways. I think that's way more interesting to just having, 60 characters, but having like 10 or 20 different souls that all do different things that play differently. I think that's really intriguing, and I hope it's something they, don't get too crazy with DLC in the future. But obviously there's characters I want in this game and a lot of other people want, so hopefully they make it in there. One of my other complaints that I have is I do understand that this is an anime fighter, and you're talking to the guy here that loves anime bullshit and all the explosions and beams and crazy VFX, but the problem is that I have noticed that the screen sometimes just gets so cluttered with that stuff that you cannot see anything. Like if you're getting corner pressured and somebody's just trying to catch you in a mix-up, the VFX and the counter and all the stuff just exploding on your screen and the camera moving around, sometimes it's really jarring. It wasn't very frequently, but there was a couple of times, I think, with Chip. I was fighting a Chip, and he got me in his, like, command grab that he has, and every time he did, there was, like, a puff of smoke. But before the puff of smoke would evaporate, he would grab me with the command grab again, and it would just stack, like, layers and layers of his smoke animation, and it completely covered my side of the screen, and I was completely blind, and there was nothing I could react to, because I had no idea what my character was doing if I was even moving. So, I think it's a little too crazy with that. Maybe they can tone it down a bit. I don't think they're going to. And again, when it works, it's really impactful, and the game just feels amazing and looks amazing. But sometimes it gets a little crazy with that. But, what are you going to do? Overall, my closing thoughts on Guilty Gear Strive. Is it the evolution or revolution of fighting games? Did it actually completely surpass my expectations and blow my mind? No. I honestly believe it. I think in some regards, yes, like with the netcode and everything like that, and with how they kind of watered down some things, but also opened up a lot of other doors, and the overall aesthetic and design and how it plays and feels. Again, netcode, phenomenal. I think in those regards, that's something that should just be, elementary to fighting games at this point. It's surprising me it's taken this long for a modern fighting game to have good netcode like this, and to actually give people options of creativity and stuff, and not just following spreadsheets and opening the game up to players like publicly like this, and letting people just mess around and have fun, and not have this huge focus on being, ranking and all this other stuff. It's just about playing the game, having fun, finding stuff out, playing tournaments, you do you, and just getting better at the game. I think that is an awesome step in, the direction of where fighting games should go. But also, I feel like there's a lot of things that can be improved upon. But will I say that it absolutely overdid my expectations and blew them out of the park? I would say it met my expectations. And what you've seen in all the gameplay, what you see is how the game plays. Like, what you see is what you get. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I think it's going to be a very powerful opening to the next generation of fighting games that, Street Fighter, Tekken, a lot of other fighting games should take notes from. And if that's going to be Guilty Gear's legacy, then let it be, because what Arc System Works has done here is something really, truly amazing. And what seems to be common sense is in the, Japanese fighting game developers' minds, what seems to be common sense just ain't too common, apparently, and someone needed to take the leap that Arc System Works is doing with this game, and I think it's going to work out for them, and, I look forward to the full release, and hopefully some of these things get addressed, like, the lobbies, and, maybe tone some stuff down, or balance some things out here and there, and, relook at some characters, but that's what betas are for. And either way, the game's going to be awesome, and I'm looking forward to the full release.